Madam Speaker, what a totally sickening display of hypocrisy from both the Liberal and the Labor Party. Total duplicity that both parties can pretend that this has got anything to do with a concern for the climate emergency that the planet is experiencing right now. For the children that have stood on our Parliament lawns will continue to come and stand on our Parliament lawns and demand that their leaders take action. Action on the climate emergency means stopping the use of coal. I mean, the IPCC has made it abundantly clear we have to get our existing coal usage down to 0 to 2% of what we're using now, immediately, within 20 years' time. And yet the Labor Party and the Liberal Party are both lovers of coal, and they are both flag champion wavers for the coal industry. Both the Labor Party and the Liberal Party want to open the biggest coal mine in the world, Madam Speaker. The Labor Party wants to open. The Liberal Party wants to open the biggest coal mine in the world. Madam Speaker, this week in federal Parliament, in case it's not clear enough, the hypocrisy that's happening here, the utter shamefaced duplicity.
Yeah.
Mark.
Dear colleagues, Co-Chair, the Honourable Joel Fitzgibbon, the Labor Shadow Member for Resources, Member for Hunter, and Craig Kelly, the Member for Hughes, the Liberal Member for Hughes, in federal Parliament this week have proposed an invitation to all senators and members to join the Parliamentary Friends of Australian Coal Exports for the 46th Parliament, calling all friends from the Labor and the Liberal Party to come and join them in the loving of coal. I think the only thing that the Labor Party regrets about how they approached the last election was that they weren't the one to bring the coal lump into Parliament. You know, really, Bill Shorten should have done that, and that would have sealed their position for the election. Madam Speaker,
Yes,
Mr. O'Byrne, not at all.
Mr. O'Byrne.
This is a naked.
Right, one of us has to go out, Mr. O'Byrne. I think it's you. Could I ask you to leave for 30 minutes?
Okay.
Thank you.
Not sure if I've got a choice on it. Sorry.
No.
Madam Speaker.
And may I just make that warning to everyone else in this chamber if we continue with this across the chamber dialogue?
Thanks, Madam Speaker. It's pretty hard not to have to shout in this place, but I've got a lot to say, and behind me are all the young people in the Tasmanian community and the young people in Australia who know what they want for the future of Australia, and they want us to be clean and green, and that means you cannot have your cake and eat it. You cannot support the whims of your coal lobbying masters, like the Liberal Party and the Labor Party do, and call for clean, green, renewable energy. You can't do both, Madam Speaker, because we have to get rid of our dependency on coal. We have to stop using it. We have to get rid of the old coal-fired power stations. We have to not open, Mr. Tucker, the new Adani coal mine that is being proposed. We cannot do that. We just simply can't do these things. And so this motion today is not about the need for climate change action. It is not about the need for renewable energy so that we can bring down our carbon emissions, so that we can stop the climate emergency that's unfolding. Because the IPC and the experts only last week have given us not 12 years, Madam Speaker, but 18 months now. Yeah. The time frame is getting shorter. This is utterly serious. This is not about political wedges. We don't have time for playing games. It is shocking and distressing if any people watching this would see that this is being treated like it's a joke. This is so serious. The reason we need renewable energy in Australia is not for business. It's not for corporate interests. It is not for short-term gain. It is for the sake of our children, for the sake of ourselves, for goodness sake. You know, I want to be able to grow old in a planet that is habitable, with
Some
plants and
grandchildren
animals
would be
around me
nice.
that can support me. I want to be able to eat food that's grown in Tasmania, which has a climate that can support agriculture and support farming. I want to be able to go fishing still in the future and see fish in the sea and to look at the beauty of the world around us. We can only do these things if we stop using coal.
Support Robin's Island.
Well, then don't support your colleagues, Ms. Ryler, in the federal government, who are calling for the Friends of Coal. Don't support that. Stand up against the Adani mine. Stand up against this stuff. That's what it needs. It needs Liberal members with spine. It needs
Our
Labor
children
members
are
with
making
spine,
decisions
who
not
aren't
to
just
have
looking at the
children.
next election.
You heard him say he
understand
doesn't
what's
want
happening.
Madam
coal.
Speaker,
Excuse
Madam
me.
Speaker,
Let him say that.
I want to propose an amendment.
You should welcome that.
Order. There's an amendment to be proposed.
I'm proposing an amendment to this motion today, because we need to actually talk about what's really happening here with the Battery of the Nation. So the amendment I propose, and I'll circulate this amendment, is that all the words after that the House be removed and be substituted with the following. 1. Notes that the Liberals repeatedly talk about the Marinus project and use it as a political wedge, particularly during election periods, despite the fact that they've not put forward a financing proposal or a position on who should finance the multi-billion-dollar project. 2. Agrees that the project could cost in excess of current total public non-financial corporation sector debt, and feasibility studies and prominent economists such as Saul Eslake have raised serious concerns about the viability of the project, which have not been addressed by the state government. 3. Notes that the Liberals passed legislation to set wholesale electricity prices at a higher rate than was projected, leading to energy bills decreasing by less than they otherwise would have. 4. Notes with alarm that the Liberal government continues to allow Entura to engage in profiteering from immoral projects overseas, such as the Karuma hydropower project in Uganda, which has been linked to killings and other human rights violations. And 5. Condemns the Liberal government for their lack of honesty, ethics or a plan in their handling of the energy portfolio.
Hear, hear.
So, Madam Speaker, it is incredibly serious and concerning that the Liberals are approaching this issue with a deep cynicism. And we all want to have more renewable energy. We all need to look after and protect the ecosystems that we have around us. We need to do all these things at the same time, Madam Speaker. We need to store more carbon in the ground. We need to protect forest health. We need to make sure our species don't go extinct, as they are rapidly going extinct around the planet. A million species planet-wide are under threat, imminent threat, Madam Speaker.
Including humanity.
You know, yeah, that's right. So, but we must do all these things, which means that we must look at each project with an eye to the local situation as well as the global story. Yes, we must look at the development application, and we haven't seen it for Robin's Island. We haven't seen it for many other things being proposed. We must look at these things, and we must bring proper science and actually have a really serious look at all the impacts.
Point of order, can I just clarify, you can circulate the amendment so that...
Yes, I am. And perhaps
Thank you.
I'll pass them to the clerk. Apologies for that. Thank you. So we can't, on the one hand, Madam Speaker, simply give lip service to clean green energy, back it in when it involves short-term massive building constructions, which is what the Liberals' motion is all about. It's about building, it's about business, it's about keeping corporate donations flowing, and it is not sincerely about doing the planning that we need for where we should put renewable energy in Tasmania, how much more we need, and what the costs of a second interconnector are. May I remind the House that it was Christine Milne who first coined the term on behalf of the Greens for Battery of a Nation. It was her forward-thinking vision. The Greens have always been standing up for the need to protect the future of all species on this planet by addressing the reality of the heating of the planet. We've always understood that. As soon as the scientists have been there for decades, we have been advocating for us to take action on the evolving heating of the planet. So we will not be lectured to by the Labor and the Liberal Party, who just at the last election are still waving the banner for the coal industry, who this week are actively promoting Australian coal exports. If Adani gets built, as the Labor and Liberal parties both support, it would produce 705 million tonnes of carbon emissions a year, Madam Speaker, from the coal that has been that will be burnt as a result of the exports. It will produce a year 1.3 times Australia's annual carbon dioxide emissions that we produce at the moment. Now, this is in the context of the United Nations saying we must use 0 to 2% of the current coal usage. I just don't really understand how any person in this place doesn't get the reality of what we're talking about here. But I'll leave that to members to reflect on themselves. I want to make the point, I suppose, that we don't have time to go into more detail about, I don't have time to speak to each of these parts of the motion in detail, except to say that it is incredibly surprising to people who are concerned about trying to work out the complex dynamics, I suppose, of the national electricity market and the role that Tasmania can play in that. And the Greens are absolutely open to hearing the conversation, to hearing the case for a second interconnector, to understanding what the business case would be and who would pay for it. Now, the Liberals keep announcing it, election after election. It is simply being used as a cynical electioneering tool. But Tasmanians are being treated with contempt when people like Saul Estlake and anybody else who writes or asks questions on the topic are given no information about the business case. We're expected to take it on faith that it will produce thousands of jobs and bring $5 billion worth of sort of economic benefit to the community. Well, who says? And on what basis? These are massive figures. Tasmania does not have an endless amount of funding from the federal government. We have to be very clear about the value it will provide for us and what it will cost us into the future and what else we could be spending that money on, if indeed it ever comes. So, Madam Speaker, I really, on behalf of Tasmanians who have rising anxiety about the climate emergency, I really plead with the government to be really honest and upfront about the reality. Stop using this as a political wedge. We simply don't have time to be playing games about this. Just stand aside from your federal colleagues and what they're doing, and just imagine that we are the island that we are, and that we don't have the support, and that we are not contaminated by the revolting influence of the coal industry on politics at the federal level in Australia. Look at us in Tasmania. We can do so much. We have the capacity. We have an island that is blessed with resources. But we have to look ahead and not just look to the short term, not to look to the next election.